Okay, cool, y'all. Well, let's wet felt some beads. So again, the reason we want to wet felt beads, you might just want to have felt beads. You might already make them and have a fast way, but we want to do this as a stepping stone to doing a more complex project later. And if we have time, we'll wet felt some canes, or canes, and by canes I just mean like little ropes, little snakes. But what we'd like to do is do that again later so I can show you how to do some more complex canes and have fun with some things you might make with that. So are y'all ready to felt a little bit? Yes, Ann says. Okay, so Ann's going to turn us down. I have here just a collection of fibers. This is the MC1. This is the short fiber merino bats. These right here are all the short fiber merino bats in just a collection of colors. This is some merino top. And this is MC1 batting. You know, it doesn't really matter what fiber you have. It'd be nice if it wet felts pretty easily. But my suggestion in wet felting the beads, I'm going to show you a little process that I sort of, I want to say modeled after the ladies in Nepal who make lots of beads and make these incredible bead rugs. So I'm going to show you how I do it and give you some considerations. You tell me, are we okay here? This is the merino short fiber bats. I really like how it wet felts to such a smooth, tight finish. And the thing to do is first, like many of you already know how to make a ball, I might draft it out just a little bit, and I'm just going to fold it really, really tight. I'm pinching really tight on this. Can y'all see okay? I'm just rolling this up. Remember that the more air you get out of your piece when you prepare it for felting, the faster it's going to felt for you. So I'm kind of white nailing it here and making this really tight. Just roll it into a little ball. And when you get to the ends, always with the ends, just try and use those as little sealers, wrap them all the way around. Now, when you have this bead sort of formed, you can go one of two directions. One, you can just use a needle, and I'm just using a 42 gauge triangle needle, and just tack down those loose fibers. I'm not going to needle felt the ball. It's already compact. So just tack down those loose fibers and kind of get it round, wherever they're kind of sticky uppy.
And Sue asks, which wool is easier to make canes and beads with?
I really like the short fiber merino bats, but I've made beads and canes with everything. So I'm just going to put it in my little bucket here. I don't know if y'all can see that. I'm just going to put it in my bucket of things to be felted. So my suggestion is kind of prepare a bunch of beads to start. And notice that I might start with the big fluffy end first. You can just draft it out a little bit. If you have a longer fiber, then draft it out. This is really short, so you don't have to draft it out a bunch. And I'll do merino top and MC1 batting too, so you can see. Okay, now, so instead of needle felting, another option is just to wet it a little bit. So I have a tiny, tiny bit of water here in a bucket and a little bit of soap, and then I'm just going to kind of slime it together. Just slime it together a little bit with some soap and water and tack it down. That's another way. So you don't have to needle felt them if you're kind of averse to that. You can just use, I have a little bit of our olive oil soap and just a tiny bit of water, and then I'm just going to kind of tack it all down. If you want to leave them till the next day, you would probably be better off, if you're going to make a big bowl of them, to go ahead and needle felt them into shape. You could also just roll it in the palm of your hand a little bit and just get it all kind of tacked down. Too much pressure when it's at this stage and it may not stay.
Darlene,
so, yeah, go ahead.
Darlene asks, what does it mean to draft it out?
Oh, okay, let me dry my hands and explain. So let's look at merino top. When we draft, drafting is really more like a, a spinning term, but it means to kind of pull the wool out. So here's I just took a little tiny slice off of our merino top. When you draft, you're just going to pull the fibers apart a little bit, but not off. So when you draft, you pull. You just put a little more space in between the fibers. And I know you can't see much happening, but I'm just taking the fibers from being tight like this and drafting means just pulling them apart a little bit. And so it's just going to allow you to make a little bit more of a web. So this is the merino top. Now I've drafted it out a little bit, and now I'm going to make a ball. You could also tear it apart, like make a big mush of it. But if you alternate, if you roll that ball, then the fibers are going to get going in multiple different directions anyway. So you don't have to make a big mess of it. Meaning, like, you don't have to tear it apart and turn it into a bat. You can make beads just like this.
And a couple of our felting friends are wondering about the temperature of the water.
I'm going to use hot water, and I'll show you. I'll show you. I'm going to use hot water, but you know, it can cool down. And now all I'm going to do is tack this into a bead. So this is my method. I like, one, I like needle felting. Two, I like wet felting. But I like to have some projects I can just kind of do when I'm chilling out in the evening. And you can prep your little beads just like that and make a whole bunch and then prepare them for wet felting later on. So let me make one more, or two more. Here's an MC1 bat. So you'll recognize this as being a little more springy. And the same thing. Now you can needle felt beads 100%, but wet felted beads will go a little bit faster actually than if you were to needle felt each bead down, at least with this method.
Connie shares that when she felts her beads, she uses very, very hot water, and that the felting goes super fast.
Yeah, that's my preference too. If you're doing 100% wool, if you can use hot water, then you may as well. And as you'll see, you're not going to get your hands in it anyway. So that, you know, the MC1 just grabs onto itself so nicely. So let's just make one more so we know we have a good group of fluffy balls. Go ahead.
And Pam asks, what would you use the beads for?
Well, for this, we're going to use them for inclusions for wet felting later on. Like I posted in the promo for today's episode, I posted a picture where I used some of my felted beads as little mounds. They can be exposed or not exposed in your felting. So some people like to make jewelry with them, whether it's a bracelet or a necklace or earrings. Some people make little garlands with them. Like we have some on our heart garland, right, Anne? We have needle felted, those are all needle felted actually, but on our little heart garland. So they're really just for decoration or for elements in your felting project. So here I have this little bowl of beads, okay? Any questions before we go on? Any more?
Linda asks, do the beads shrink in size too?
Yeah, oh yeah, they're gonna felt down. So they're gonna go from fluffy to felt down. So let me show you what I found, and maybe you can find something similar. First of all, here's what I have. I have my beads, they're prepared for wet felting. I have a little bucket, and I have just a little soap chip. This is our olive oil soap, or some, you know, dish soap. Use what you have. I have some very hot water. And then I have this little three-part system that I found. This is a bowl with a lid, but it includes a little colander inside. So I don't know if it's a salad spinner or what. I've never owned a salad spinner, but this is what we're going to use today. We're going to start with just the bowl and the lid. We see everything fine, Anne?
Yeah, that view is perfect.
Okay, so what we do is we have our bowl. I'm going to pour a little hot water right over my soap. I hope it's still hot. It's pretty good. It's pretty good and warm. We started a little while ago. And just soap up your water. I'm using barely any water at all. This is just a little bit of water. And I'm going to pour my beads in the bucket. And, whoops, I lost one. I'm going to pour my beads in the bucket. And then just drizzle, not too much, a little bit of water over them. And we're going to start to just bounce them around. I'm going to put the lid on. So now somebody posted that they use a little plastic egg. So this would allow you to do a lot more than 1 or 2 beads at a time. So get them going a little bit. You don't want to go too far. We've just got all of that water that we added absorbed, and now we're going to add some more.
And Connie asks, should the beads be less firmly felted if you're planning on incorporating them in another felted product?
We're not gonna, I'll show you how to felt them sort of soft and how to felt them hard. But this is not gonna felt them hard. But what you do see is that they really take up all that water quickly.
And Fraser asks, at what point would you put marbles or stones inside?
Before you do this. If you want marbles or stones inside, you should do it before you wet this. You would wrap the wool around the marbles and stones. Okay, so these are just starting to get felted. I'm going to put just a little more water here, and I'm going to soap up my hands just so I can kind of see how everyone's doing. Kind of put my hands in there, make sure everyone's kind of wet. The one thing about the bowl is it really keeps you from flattening the beads, whereas your hands are more likely to flatten the beads. But for a moment, just rub them all around a little tiny bit, and then we'll put them back in, and then we're going to change what we're doing just a tiny bit.
Judy asks, don't they stick to each other?
Nope. I don't know why. They just don't. I don't know. They just don't. You kind of get a pretty good ball formed. I guess they just don't have enough time to grab onto each other. I had a workshop, is that Judy Chapman?
Judy Stadola.
Oh, Judy Stadola. I had a workshop and we were using beads in the design, and I just passed around the bowl. So I had everybody make some beads, and then we added the water and the soap, and we just passed the bowl around so that everybody could do it. So we got them going pretty good, but let's take them to the next stage. Some of these are softer than others. Let's take them to the next stage.
Carolyn shares, this is a great way to get kids involved.
For sure, for sure. Now one thing you can do, I'm going to pour this over here. One thing you can do if you feel like you have too much water is put it in the colander. If you feel like you have too much water, pull it in the colander, let the water pass over it, and then you'll let the water bang out if you put the colander inside. But we're going to pull out our super bubble.
And Patty asks, do the colors run?
No, I haven't seen the colors run, not on the short fiber bats. Some of the carded merino top I've seen run, but no. Okay, see, are we in a pretty good position? I have my grippy mat underneath. I have a towel, and this is our super bubble. I'll just hold that up for, you can see it's a real rigid bubble. And then you can just pour your beads out onto your bubble. And you can, with your lid, I like to use the lid, you could use a cutting board or something like that, roll them around on the bubble. They're gonna roll. Yeah, you'll have to chase one or two here and then. Now, if you want to felt them soft, you can use something like this, and you can use your hands and roll them on the bubble. What's funny is how they sort of follow each other. Like, they kind of stay together. You can add soap to your hands if you want. And you'll be able to feel how hard felted they are. And if you want them really hard, you can keep with this lid, and I really press down on them, but keep them rolling. You want to keep them rolling so they stay round, and shift it up now and again. But you could also add you could also work with a wood cutting board. I ran out of time this morning, and I was going to make us one with like drawer pulls from the hardware store. Yep. So I'm going to show you something else fun that I learned. Some of y'all get a kick out of this. I got a kick out of this too. So here's all our little beads and stuff, and maybe your hands feel like they don't want to stay on them. Try some gardening gloves with a little plasticky, grippy stuff on them. And use those as part of your rolling surface.
And Kelly wants to know, are the bubbles up or down?
The bubbles are up for sure. Yeah, you want to use that as like your agitating surface. And that's all you got to do, you guys, is that right there. Roll them around on each other, and you're going to get some nice little firm beads. I don't really use these all that often, but That's just fun. So these are pretty good little beads. If you want to hard felt them, keep mashing them with your plastic or use like a little wooden board. Oh, I have a little wooden board. Let's use that. I have our Enjoy, let's use our Enjoy Today board. You think it'll come on? Hopefully it's not. Let's do our Enjoy Today board. And really, look how they all like cling to the wood and they stay on there.
And Vicki asks, if you don't have a super bubble, can bamboo work?
Yeah, use bamboo. Use just the grippy mat too. You could just roll on the grippy mat. Or use bamboo, or yeah, just use whatever you have. But you can make really fun beads and you can take them as far as you want. Just know that to, you know, increase your pressure if you want them to be really hard felted. If you want to use them in our wet felting projects later, stop when you can still squishy them a little bit, but where they don't mush out. Like this one is too squishy and this one is pretty good. And let me show you what we want to do. We will be, I don't know if these are the good scissors. We're going to want to be able to cut them in half just with regular scissors, and then we'll use those in projects later. So in our wet felting, you don't want them squishy. Go ahead and get them to a part where they're a little firm like this.
And Pat wants to know, can you put the beads in an enclosed baggie and do kind of the same process?
I have no idea. That's a good question. I didn't try that. Just the bowl, you know, the bowl gives a surface for it to bounce off of and bang off of. And the ladies in Nepal that make these great big, they make these bead rugs with just thousands of beads. They work sitting on the ground, and some of them have these huge tubs that they toss them in. And since I'm not making thousands, I thought, hey, I bet I could use a regular bowl. And that would be my encouragement, is just try one of your mixing bowls or baking bowls at home.
And a couple of our felting friends want to know how long do you roll them, and or how do you know when to stop rolling?
I think you just want them to be semi-firm, so that when you squeeze them, they're not going to mush out, depending on what you want to do with them. I mean, because this one's not quite done. This is one of the ones I thought we would test and see what happens if we just barely put it together. This one I would say is not quite done, and so what you can do is just add more water and more banging. So just notice that they may not all be the same, and just spend a little more time, obviously in groups. You don't have to do one at a time. Do them in groups or do them under your platform so that they get just a little more firm. You just don't want them to mush out when you press on them, because we're going to wet felt with them later. Or if you're using them for jewelry or something, you don't want them to be airy. So remember our firmness. You probably want the firmness to be about, like if you were pushing your ring finger and your thumb together, that the firmness feels about like that part of your hand right there. Or this. But that's a firmness test. So notice how squishy that is. Notice that's a little more firm, and that's a little more firm. Years ago, my husband was a meat cutter, and he taught me that's how you gauge whether meat is rare, medium, well done, or very well done. And so in the early 2000s, I did a video on needle felting with that as firmness. And that's how I say, between here and here is good. Good.
And Leslie asks, do you rinse the beads when you're
Yeah, rinse them, you know, do your vinegar soaks if you want, but you know, go ahead and rinse them and get all the soap out, and then just bang it back out, especially like in the colander, bang all that out and set them out to dry in the sun. And I don't think the gals in Nepal vinegar soak them. I don't think so.